Friday morning, 9 a.m., and we're up in St. Philip lot. And that's when the house really started talking. Because for most of this journey, Luke and I, and many of you too, we were building from a foreign, from overseas, from over and away. And we had been managing this project from thousands of miles away through WhatsApp messages and photographs, videos, phone calls, schedules, promises, and sometimes silence. But now we're in Barbados, and family, there is a big difference between somebody sending you a picture of your house and standing inside it yourself. Because when you are there, you don't just see what's completed, you see what's incomplete. You see who's working, you see how they're working, you see what has been protected, you see what hasn't. And sometimes you start noticing things you didn't even know you needed to look for. But before Luke and I even walked through that airport gate to head to St. Philip, there was already one question I had been trying to answer from New York. The windows. Welcome back to Building Back Home with Jackie.
Yeah, man, the vision's strong. Building back home where I belong. Ooh, yeah. But every foundation got a story to tell about the unseen cracks and the caution bell. So come walk with me through the sun and the rain. On Jackie's journey, we gon' rise again.
As always, family, this is our personal experience based on what we lived, observed, and documented at the time. I'm sharing our journey for educational purposes, not to discourage anyone from building back home, but hopefully to help you build more informed. By November, I would say by early November, I had been told through the architect that the majority of the downstairs windows and doors were installed. But the video I had received didn't show me that. So on November the 3rd at 7:34 a.m. in the early morning, I sent the contractor a voice message.
Told me that that I'm aware that your phone is not working. I have no idea that your phone is not working because I spoke to you last Tuesday. So if you have said anything about your phone not working, that might have missed me because I don't know. I also have an email address which you have, and I think that you should have been able to get in contact with me somehow. The other thing he said is that the majority of the windows downstairs are done. Let me tell you, I know you the day we were trying to get you. Said he saw you coming out while he was leaving. At that time, the guys were just mixing some cement. He saw nothing go in any windows. Okay. However, you told that the majority of the downstairs windows are done. I have a video with two windows that were done. I got that video yesterday. Two windows in one room. So please, unless your guys worked today and finished that, then I would say, oh, okay. But I have nothing other than one room at the back.
And I told him I had no idea that his phone wasn't working. The last time I knew we spoke, or I had spoken with him, and even if the phone wasn't working, I reminded him, you got my email address, you have my email, and there were other ways to reach me. But then I addressed the windows, and yes, I even wrote and asked at one point if I needed to bring in a phone from New York for him. But this wasn't just about a telephone, it was about communication. Because before that, on October 28th, I had already written in the group chat that we had been calling all day with no answer. Then on November 3rd, around 12:09 p.m., I put something else in writing, and I wrote that I just want to note for the record that we've been trying to reach the contractor by phone for over a week now without success. I mentioned the financial summary, the allowance adjustment, the site progress, and our upcoming trip to Barbados. No response from the contractor in that exchange. Family, listen carefully to what I was doing. I wasn't trying to prove anybody wrong. I was trying to figure out what was right. How many windows were actually installed? 2? The majority downstairs? All but 2? Those were 3 different project updates. And remember, we were thousands of miles away. Later that same day, the architect sent another important message. He advised the contractor to use the floor plans together with the manufacturer's shop drawing schedule to make sure that the correct windows were being installed in the correct locations. The communication problems, they continued. And at one point, the architect asked whether I had heard from the contractor, and I said, no. His response was OMG with these wide-eye emojis. Then I sent this voice message to the architect.
It's Friday. I just checking in because I have never been so disappointed in anyone who's doing a service for me like I am with email that he sent, that text saying that he's going to send something, and I think that was last Tuesday. Until now, he has never called. He has not updated us on anything or given me any report. And I'll be there in a few days, and I have to really consider if we should continue with this guy. This is so frustrating. I've never I can't get it understand. And if you can, I don't want to push you on this, but please see if you can get him. I do not want to come to Barbados. We do not want to come to Barbados and then leave there with nothing substantial happening on that project. It's about time that he get his act together. I'm really frustrated.
I was frustrated, as you hear me say in this November 14th voicemail. All through the remainder of the month, there were many messages. But you know what? Enough with trying to figure this all out from New York, because now we were going home. We were going to bed. The same morning, Luke and I were flying into Barbados, November 20th. The architect had gone to the house himself, and at 7:58 a.m. he wrote, visited the site last night and returned this morning. Then 1 minute later, he sent this message at the contractor by his name. You told me yesterday that all but 2 windows were installed. And then SMH, shaking my head. Sometimes, family, I don't need to add anything to the WhatsApp. I'll let you interpret that one for yourself. And I also want to be fair that by the time Luke and I got there and I physically reached the house, progress had occurred. We observed approximately 7 windows installed. So there were more windows installed than what I had seen in that November the 3rd video, but fewer than what we understood as well, it said all but two. And the windows we observed were not pinned or securely fixed, and the hardware, not the handle, not a lock. The hardware wasn't installed. The architect's next message therefore became even more important. He said, I would recommend you pin, secure, and seal all around windows, preventing any possible theft. He repeatedly then asked the contractor to call him. So before Luke and I had even touched down in Barbados, that same day or even conducted our formal walkthrough, the house was already talking. Friday morning, 9 a.m. on our lot, Luke and I met with the contractor. We're in Barbados now, and we walked our house. Now, this was different from July. This time we weren't just stopping by for a few hours. We had questions. We wanted explanations, and we wanted to understand what had happened during the weeks up to yesterday leading up to our arrival. The contractor explained that the recent delays and the lack of communication were connected to significant changes within his staff. He explained that some workers had not been meeting the expected standards and that changes had been made to strengthen the team. After the meeting, I did what document control Jackie does. I documented my understanding. I thanked the contractor for meeting with us. I documented just as I had understood and what was discussed, and that work would resume the following day. The team would work on the windows and doors. Scaffolding would be set up so the upstairs exterior rendering would be completed. And our understanding was that this work would be completed within approximately 2 weeks. We agreed to meet the contractor and his workers the next morning, Saturday at 9 a.m. Yay! But I also asked for something else. The financials that I've been asking for months. I wrote, we would also like to schedule a separate meeting to review the financials, including all payments made, the change orders, were reductions, and the updated balance consolidated into one tracking document, because now 2 inspections were beginning. One was physical, because we are there, like what is actually in this house, and the other was financial. What does the record say should be in this house? So a document control Jackie was now full awake. I was woke. Saturday morning, we were expecting workers, but instead at 7:15 a.m., the contractor messaged me that the workers weren't going to be there as expected. Regarding the windows, he explained that at least 3 people were needed, and he indicated that work would now start Monday. And at 7:25 a.m. I responded, okay, thanks contractor. Try to see what you can do. Hope they can start. All the best, Jackie. And I want you to notice something here, listeners. I wasn't fighting. I wasn't threatening anybody. I wasn't talking about termination. I was still hoping we could get this project moving. So at 7:44 a.m., I updated the architect that the contractor's crew wouldn't be there. And his response was, what happened? I thought work was starting. Exactly, so did we. He then emphasized the windows need to be securely fixed, and this is high priority for me. Eventually, I wrote, okay, let's plan another day soon. During that first walkthrough, Luke and I had also asked to see the remaining windows and doors that were inside the container. Remember, we had watched them being delivered back in September through our phones. Now we wanted to physically see them ourselves. But the contractor, he didn't have the container keys with him. So that would have to wait too. By Monday morning, something had changed in me. Because at 5:29 a.m., I probably couldn't sleep. I wrote, "Good morning, all. We will be on site at 9 a.m. this morning and every day until we leave the island. Every day." We were expecting progress, windows and doors, secure installation, exterior rendering, and other outstanding work. The contractor responded that he would arrive later after collecting scaffolding. Listeners, we got there early. And we waited. And we waited. And we waited. Eventually, Luke and I, we went back to our Airbnb, which wasn't too far. And then we returned. There were more delays that morning, including an issue involving, as per the contractor, the concrete mixer.
Left that message at 12:12. The first thing we told you, we were here from 9 o'clock this morning. By the time we get over, we see that 10 o'clock, 11, you didn't come, we run home, come back, 2, 4, 6 scaffolding, 8 scaffolding, thing here lean on the house. You said no, this message at 12:12. And we are here and it is almost 4 o'clock. It's 3:30 and nobody on the site, nothing is happening. This can't happen to us because every day, so we need to see somebody in this job every day doing something. This is ridiculous. We do not want to come and find your.
But from that point forward, Luke and I weren't waiting in New York for somebody to send us a picture anymore. We were going to the site ourselves every day. And that changed everything. The contractor had already told us about the workforce changes, and now we were there. We could see how small the workforce actually was. So we wanted to see progress, particularly with the rendering, so that before we returned to New York, we would have seen something. So Luke asked the contractor whether he could ask one of his cousins to come and temporarily work for him if he can hire him to help, at least do some little labor work. And the contractor agreed. And Luke's cousin joined the crew the next day, helping with concrete mixing and general labor work. But then something happened that still makes me a little sad, because one day Luke and I were sitting at the site, and as we often did, with our little cold drinks and little snacks, we sat looking across at the project, and a young gentleman came looking for the contractor. He said he was looking for money he was owed. He had recently had a baby. Now, family, I cannot independently tell you the circumstances around that situation. So I'm not going to tell you that the contractor wasn't paying his workers. I'm not going to tell you that. I can only tell you what happened in front of us. A gentleman came looking for the contractor regarding money he said he was owed. Another day, I believe it would have been probably the next day. Luke and I were sitting in the car, again across from the project, when another gentleman walked onto the property. He was looking around. We can see him from where we were. So we approached him, and he explained that someone had sent him there to find a contractor because he was looking for work. Well, the contractor wasn't there yet, and it was pretty early in the morning. So Luke started talking to him, and in that beautiful, heavy Bajan accent, Luke asked, "So what you just do?" The gentleman responded, "I just do what the government do." Now, listeners, I had to hear the rest of this, because what it is that the Barbados government does not do. He explained, "I just cut down gullies." And I smiled, because that's hard work. That's brave work. And this gentleman looked like somebody willing to work. And secretly, I'm telling you, I hoped the contractor would come soon and give him an opportunity. And shortly afterwards, the contractor did arrive. And we saw him and the gentleman, they spoke. And while Luke and I watched from a distance, the gentleman changed into work clothes and started working. He had been hired right there. Now let me say this. Everybody deserves an opportunity to learn. Everybody starts somewhere. That wasn't my issue. My question became, who on this site had the experience to supervise and check the work of the people who were learning? Because only days earlier, we had been told that changes had been made to strengthen the workforce. Now, sitting at the site ourselves, we were seeing how the workforce was being assembled. And I also couldn't forget the gentleman who came looking for money that he said he was owed to him. So these weren't conclusions, they were observations, and observations create questions. Again, things were happening, work was being done, but now we were there to see how it was being done. And that's the difference. In the middle of all this construction stress, Luke and I had some other business to take care of. Do you remember? We have to go and apply for our Trident IDs. So on November 25th, we drove to the government office in Warrens, and family, we were surprised in a good way. The process was organized. The wait wasn't nearly what we had expected, and we were told to return December the 5th to collect our IDs, one day before we were scheduled to fly back to New York. We were happy glad. That experience, though, reminded me of something important about building back home. Sometimes, those of us in the diaspora, we return carrying memories of how things worked years ago. But Barbados is changing too. Systems change, technology changes, processes change. And part of successfully building back home means keeping yourself current with the country's ongoings, not simply the Barbados that you remember of yesteryear. And I want to keep saying this throughout this series. Building back home in Barbados can absolutely be successful. I know people, we know people who have done it. But this is our experience. This is not Barbados' entire story. During our daily visits, we did see progress. Some exterior rendering was being completed. There was work we liked. And when something was done well, we said so. Many times we were there with the workers and made, little jokes and complimented them on things that we see how they handle them with strength. So this isn't a story where everything the contractor or workers touch was automatically bad. That's not what happened. There were things we appreciated, things we complimented. Workers were trying to earn a living, and genuine progress was happening. However, during our visit, we did not observe any additional windows being installed. None. And there were still things we couldn't ignore. One involved protecting the windows that were already paid for. Because on December 1st at 2:40 p.m., Luke and I were on the site and we saw the rendering, the concrete material splash and lumps of it on the glass and the casings of the windows. I took photographs and I sent them directly to the contractor. See here. My message said, "Contractor, good afternoon. We are here inspecting the site. See these pics of the windows with lots of splashes and lumps of concrete on the glass and casings. This is not good. These windows must be protected." I'm saying it again for the 4th time. Family, this is when I started learning that done isn't always one question. A window can be installed, but is it secured? Does it have its hardware? Is it sealed? Is it pinned in? And while other work is happening around it, is somebody protecting what you've already paid for? Progress on one activity should not damage another. And remember, I wasn't looking at somebody else's photographs anymore. We were standing up right there. That's the difference this trip made. As we moved into the final days of our trip, activity at the project slowed again. And Luke and I were emotion disappointed. At one point, we arrived and noticed that the concrete mixer was gone. No crew working, very little happening. And family, I said a silent prayer. I thank my Heavenly Father, my Creator, my God, my friend, Jehovah, for life. And I ask for peace and for peace of mind. Then Luke and I decided, you know what? Let's go get something to eat. And then we'll go by the beach. My niece, Joy, had recently opened a cook shop within her bakery there in St. Martin's and St. Philip called the Bajan Yard, appropriately named. And I ordered some cuckoo and lamb stew. I like cuckoo. Luke ordered some Bajan chicken soup, dumplings, and the full works. After that, we planned to go to Miami Beach. We'll drive further down to Miami Beach. Because listeners, you can't go to Barbados and then go and get a sea bath. And not only that, we needed that sea bath to rinse off some of the construction stress. But something happened at the cook shop. My niece Joy introduced us to a gentleman who was doing some work at the back. She introduced us as her aunt and uncle from New York. And I said, hello. And then I heard the response from the gentleman. Hi, Luke. Hi, Jackie. Nice to meet you. In a deep British accent. And I thought, oh no, the Queen's tongue. And listeners, Growing up, I remember Barbados being called Little England. And we know tourism is part of our world. So when I heard this overseas accent, my childhood Jackie immediately recognized it. But adult Jackie heard something else. Diaspora. And knowing me, and you should know me by now, I started talking. I told him about the house and everything that was happening by the house, the delays, the visits, the communication, where we were now. Listen, I probably told him everything except what I had for breakfast that morning. And when I finally gave that poor man a chance to speak, he told us that he had experienced construction difficulties himself years earlier, and that he was now connected with a company that assisted members of the diaspora with construction issues. And he offered to take a look at our project before we left Barbados. And that one of his partners are also here on the island. And he said he could meet us. Family, after everything that Luke and I had been seeing and going through up until then, that encounter felt like that prayer I said was answered. And not because we had already decided the contractor was wrong, not because we were planning to terminate anyone. We weren't. What we knew was much simpler. We needed help understanding our project. We needed experienced, independent eyes. And just like that, the village girl who became an international risk taker, this Bajan journey now took another international turn from New York to Barbados, to China, to Colombia, and now we are going to London, England. This is how we met the company that would become our professional advisors, B3 Construction Consultancy. Well, as promised, 2 members of the B3 team met Luke and me. They looked at the project. They took photographs and videos, and they asked questions. They pointed out areas they wanted to understand better, and they asked to meet the architect and the contractor. For more than a year, Luke and I had been asking questions as homeowners. Now, experienced construction professionals were beginning to look at the same house, new eyes, and that matters. On December 2nd, I sent a message to the group, and this is what I said. Please kindly meet with the architect and our PM today at 2 p.m. on site. We will go over the plans. Listen to that language. You hear what I said? Our PM. The management structure was beginning to change. The architect intended to meet us, but Barbados rain had another plan. The rain poured down. So we adjusted. We redirected everyone to our Airbnb close to the project where we could sit down and talk. The B3 team arrived. The contractor arrived. Now, the architect, because of where he was coming from, he joined remotely. So we pulled him up by video. And we sat there and we had what I believed, or what Luke and I believed at the time, was a productive meeting. B3 was able to meet with the contractor and we explained the project history, questions were asked, and then a physical site walk through was scheduled for the next day. I also reminded the contractor to please bring the container keys, because Luke and I wanted to physically inspect the windows and the doors that we had purchased. By the next morning, professional oversight was becoming more formal. We walked the project, lots of notes and lots of questions, and requests for relevant information and clarification and updates, agreed by all that will be provided to B3 and us. Afterward, me, Jackie, document controller, I wrote, "Hi team, we thank you all for attending the site kickoff this morning." Then I asked the architect to provide B3 with all the plans and the elevation sketches, window schedules, and all the necessary details. I received this message also outside of the group chat to my phone from the contractor. This message. Now look at what's happening. Earlier in season 1, our questions sounded like, when are you coming? When is the roof being poured? When will the windows be installed? When will the workers be there? Now the questions were changing. Where are the plans? Where are the elevations? Where are the sketches? Where is the window schedule? What was specified? What was installed? What remains? And what does the documentation show? So we weren't just asking what's happening with our house. We were beginning to say, show us what's happening to our house. December 5th was our final day in Barbados, and Luke and I returned to Warren's and collected our Trident ID cards exactly when we had been told they would be ready, and they were. And we also arranged that same day when we came back to meet the contractor at the project. And of course, the contractor arrived and we completed a payment associated with the roof deck variation, the change order. Part had been handled through the bank there, and we personally handed him the remaining cash. And we thanked him for this work. That's important for me to say, because today I know what happened later. But on December 5th, Jackie and Luke, we didn't know. We didn't know what was going to happen. At that moment, despite our concerns, despite the delays, despite the workforce questions, despite the incomplete work, Luke and I were still trying to honor our obligations. We wanted our house completed. We wanted the working relationship to succeed. We were still trying to protect the dream, and now, knowing that we had professional oversight involved and we had decided that we will formally retain B3 as our advisors, we had a little more peace. December 6th, our bags are packed and it's time to fly back to New York. On our way to the airport, we drove past our lot one more time. There she was, our house, partially rendered, a few windows installed, but the installation still incomplete. 13 months after breaking ground, we were leaving her again. Then we continued toward the airport, and a few minutes away, almost walking distance, we passed another construction project nearby that we had been told that the contractor had begun working there. And as we drove past, we recognized two of the same workers we had been seeing on our project. They were working on a new concrete foundation. Now listen carefully. I didn't know the contractual arrangements for that project. I didn't know its financing. I didn't know its schedule, so I'm not going to speculate. I can only tell you what Luke and I physically saw and how it made us feel. We were sad, hurt, disappointed, and honestly, we had mixed feelings because once again we were getting on a plane and leaving our unfinished house behind. But this time something was different. We weren't leaving her completely alone. We had brought help aboard. My daddy taught me something about being out at sea. When something doesn't feel right, you don't automatically throw away the boat. You check her. You find out where the water is coming in. You check your compass. You secure what needs securing. And if the problem is bigger than you can handle yourself, you call for help. For most of season 1, Luke and I had been navigating this project from thousands of miles away, listening for information from ashore, watching the weather, reading the currents, trying to keep the boat moving. But by November, we were standing on the land ourselves, and by December, we had brought experienced people aboard. We weren't giving up on our house. We were calling for help to protect the dream. The day after we left Barbados, December 7th, I added a member of B3 to the project group chat. I welcomed him and I identified everyone. I said it's the architect, the contractor, Luke and Jackie is the clients, and now the professional project oversight. This wasn't a termination. This wasn't us abandoning our contractor. This was us trying to strengthen the management of our project. Because Luke and I had finally accepted something very important. We could not manage every aspect of this project from New York by ourselves any longer. 6 days later, December 13th, I wrote, "Good morning all, hope all is well. It's very quiet here, very quiet." And everything we had done after almost daily site visits, after those meetings, after the walkthroughs, after bringing in professional help, quiet again. But notice what had changed. I wasn't relying on one person for information anymore. I reminded the architect about information B3 had requested. I communicated with our professional advisors, and the structure had changed. On December 16th, at 6:55 a.m., I wrote, "Morning all, hope all is well. Please be reminded that we were all sent copied on email from B3CC yesterday. The email can be considered as an RFI. For those of you, it's a request for information with a due date. Please kindly respond to the request at your earliest." At 8:32 a.m., the contractor responded, "Okay." And family, that's it. That's the last WhatsApp message. Not because the story ended, because the record changed. For more than a year, so much of our construction journey had lived within WhatsApp messages, pictures, videos, promises, questions, updates. Now the conversation was moving somewhere else, to emails and RFIs and plans and schedules, professional reports, formal requests with due dates. For most of season 1, I kept asking for updates. By December, we weren't just asking for updates anymore. We were asking for records. Family, my diaspora friends, and all those who have been listening, there's a big difference between asking someone what's happening with my house and formally asking, "Show me." Before we close out season 1, family, I want to update something we've been keeping throughout this journey. Jackie's project log. Because when you're living through a construction project, 13 months can feel like one long story. But when you put the milestones on paper, the timeline tells its own story. So where did we actually stand at the end of December 2025? Let's see, 1999, the land was purchased. October 2024, ground was broken. August 2025, the original completion date not met. September 2025, roof poured, windows delivered. October 2025, we were 1 year in. November 2025, we the owners, we returned to the site, and by December 2025, we had independent professional oversight. And that begins because the project aged now 13 to 14 months. The dream is still alive. The management of it, though, is about to change. And for the first time, the way we were managing that dream was about to change. Family, when I look back, not just at November and December, but at everything we've walked through together since we broke ground in October 2024. Some of the things that seemed small while we were living them look very different now. So before we close season 1, let's put some red flags on record. Different versions of the same project status require independent verification. Repeated restart dates without corresponding activity require closer schedule monitoring. Installed does not necessarily mean complete. Security, sealing, hardware, protection, and final installation matters. A small workforce becomes a greater project risk when experience, supervision, and quality control responsibilities aren't clear. Progress on one construction activity should never damage or compromise work on materials already installed. And when communication repeatedly leaves you uncertain about progress or cost or completion, move from verbal updates to documented verification. Now, family, I don't want to leave you with just a red flag, because if all I did was tell you what went wrong, then we would miss the most valuable part of this journey, of this podcast, and what it taught us. And some of these lessons I wish I understood before we ever broke ground. So if you're building back home, planning to build back home, or even thinking about it, these are the lessons I want you to take with you from season 1. Nothing replaces physically standing inside your project and observing it for yourself. Being fair doesn't mean ignoring concerns. Give credit for genuine progress and workmanship while documenting what still needs correction. An inexperienced worker isn't automatically a bad worker, but inexperienced labor requires appropriate skilled supervision and quality control. When building remotely, don't simply ask whether something is done. Define what completion means. Independent professional oversight isn't automatically an accusation against your contractor. It's not. Sometimes it's simply responsible project management. And when communicating stops providing clarity, strengthen the documentation. And finally, building back home can succeed. But diaspora builders, you have to build with today's Barbados, not only the Barbados that we remember. And that's why my message after 12 episodes It's still not don't build back home. My message is build back home, but build informed. Ask questions. Define what complete means. Verify, document, and when you need help, bring in help. Your today's what would you do? Family, here's my season 1 what would you do? You've traveled thousands of miles and finally inspected your project yourself. There's progress, but the project is behind schedule. The workforce is small. Some things you were told don't completely match what you can see. You've documented your concern. You've paid what you've understand you're obligated to pay, and now you've found independent professionals willing to help oversee the project. What would you do? A, give the contractor another opportunity, but now under independent professional oversight. B, stop further payment until the project finances and the remaining work are independently reconciled. C, begin preparing for a change in contractor. Or D, something completely different. Tell me in the comments, please. And remember, don't answer knowing what you know about my story today. Put yourself in December 2025. What would you have done? And don't forget to subscribe, share this podcast, revisit the previous episodes, and keep watching. And one more thing before I close out season 1. Over these 12 episodes, we've collected a lot of red flags, but we've also learned a lot of lessons. So I'm working on something for those of you building back home, or even just thinking about it. The Building Back Home with Jackie Red Flags and Lessons Learned guide. It's going to be a free downloadable guide based on the lessons from season 1. Not to tell you don't build back home. Absolutely not. My message is build back home, but build inform. I'll share more about the guide soon. For more than a year, Luke and I had been asking questions as homeowners. Now, professionals were beginning to ask questions too. And in January 2026, those questions will no longer stay inside a WhatsApp chat. They would become reports, quantity surveys, formal letters, meetings, lawyers, and eventually a decision we never imagined we'd have to make when we broke ground. This is where season 1 ends. But family, this is not where the story ends. Because season 2 begins with one question. What happens when you stop asking when your house will be finished and start asking what actually happened to your project?
Shores, I bring the vision home. Built a legacy from concrete and from stone. Got the blueprints drawn, the white sands calling me. For the diaspora's children, planting the family tree. Building back home against the Atlantic tide. With Bajan roots and all that island pride. Watch the foundation rise, a brand new dawn in store. This ain't just building houses, it's something so much more. Yeah, it's Jackie and Luke building back home in Barbados.